Have you ever said the phrase, "You've just made a very powerful enemy"?
No, but I've thought it.
Madam Secretary, in February in your Asia tour, you said that we have to continue to press China on Taiwan, Tibet, and human rights. How about forced abortion?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Well, you know, in 1995, I was the first person to speak out against forced abortion in China at the 4th Annual United Nations Women's Conference. I consider any governmental imposition that imposes government policy on women to be absolutely unacceptable. And I feel strongly about forced sterilization, forced abortion, or any other egregious interference with women's rights.
Why didn't you say that in China?
I did say it in China. I said it in China 14 years ago.
But why didn't you say it in February?
Well, because they knew I'd already said it. Because they're very well aware of that. When I made that statement, the Chinese government turned off the television so that their people could not hear me say it. I have said it consistently. I've written about it. I am on record as saying that over and over again.
14 years ago, you were First Lady. Today, you're Secretary of State. There's a big difference. Why didn't you say it as Secretary of State?
I just did.
That's helpful. I
Good.
guess.
If there is one message that echoes forth from this conference, let it be that human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights once and for all.
We happen to think that family planning is an important part of women's health, and reproductive health includes access to abortion that I believe should be safe, legal, and rare. I spent a lot of my time trying to bring down the rate of abortions, and it has been my experience that good family planning and good medical care brings down the rate of abortion. Keeping women and men in ignorance and denied the access to services actually increases the rate of abortion. During my time as First Lady, I helped to create the Campaign Against Teenage Pregnancy. And while we were working to provide good information, access to contraception, and decision-making that would enable young women to protect themselves and say no, the rate of teen pregnancy went down. I'm sad to report that after an administration of 8 years that undid so much of the good work, the rate of teenage pregnancy is going up. So we disagree, and we are now an administration that will protect the rights of women, including their rights to reproductive health care.
We had a pretty good economy under Bush except for the last year.
No, we've had a really, you know, in the last 7 years, the typical American family's lost $1,000 in income. Their energy costs have gone up $2,000. The average tax cut that they got out of whatever he was doing was $600. People are net losers under the Bush economy. They were net winners under the Clinton economy.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make? It is our job to figure out what happened and do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again, Senator.
And today, she doubled down.
It seemed as though you lost your temper at the hearing.
When someone tries to put it into a partisan lens, when they focus not on the fact that we had such a terrible event happening with 4 dead Americans, but instead, what did somebody say on a Sunday morning talk show? That to me is not in keeping with the seriousness of the issue and the obligation we all have as public servants.
But do you regret what difference at this point does it make?
No, because I think that, you know, asking questions about talking points for a Sunday morning talk show is really missing the point.
Now, my question is the U.S. involved with any procuring of weapons, transfer of weapons, buying, selling, anyhow transferring weapons to Turkey out of Libya?
To Turkey? The reason I'm here today is to answer questions the best I can. I am the Secretary of State.
And the ARB made very clear that the level of responsibility for the failures that they outlined was set at the Assistant Secretary level and below. The reason we put into effect an accountability review board is to take it out of the heat of politics and partisanship and accusations and to put it in the hands of people who have no stake in the outcome. The reason I said make it open, tell the world, is because I believe in transparency. I believe in taking responsibility, and I have done so.
You can always tell when the Republicans are restless because the vice president's motorcade pulls into the Capitol and Darth Vader emerges. I'm going to respond to this because obviously making change is not about what you believe. It's not about a speech you make. It is about working hard. There are 7,000 kids in New Hampshire who have health care because I helped to create the Children's Health Insurance Program. There are 2,700 National Guard and Reserve members who have access to health care because on a bipartisan basis, I pushed legislation through over the objection of the Pentagon, over the threat of a veto from President Bush. I want to make change, but I've already made change. I will continue to make change. I'm not just running on a promise of change. I'm running on 35 years of change. I'm running on having taken on the drug companies and the health insurance companies, taking on the oil companies. So, I think it is clear that what we need is somebody who can deliver change. And we don't need to be raising the false hopes of our country about what can be delivered. The best way to know what change I will produce is to look at the changes that I've already made.
The more I learn about these proposed rules by the Bush administration, the more appalled I am and the more determined I am to stop them. This is a gratuitous, unnecessary insult to the women of the United States of America. These rules pose a dire threat to women's health, to health care providers, and to uninsured and low-income Americans seeking care. It is a disgrace, but unfortunately, it is not a surprise. The Bush administration has long put ideology and politics ahead of science and women's health.
We hear a lot of happy talk and rosy scenarios, but because of the administration's strategic blunders and, frankly, the record of incompetence in executing, you are presiding over a failed policy. Given your track record, Secretary Rumsfeld, why should we believe your assurances now?
My goodness.
Being LGBT does not make you less human. And that is why gay rights are human rights and human rights are gay rights. Gay people are born into and belong to every society in the world. They are all ages, all races, all faiths. They are doctors and teachers, farmers and bankers, soldiers and athletes. And whether we know it or whether we acknowledge it, they are our family, our friends, and our neighbors. Being gay is not a Western invention. It is a human reality. There are no acceptable limits, and there are no acceptable prejudices in the 21st century in our country. And although we weren't able to shatter that highest, hardest glass ceiling this time, thanks to you, it's got about 18 million cracks in it. Always aim high, work hard, and care deeply about what you believe in. And when you stumble, keep faith. And when you're knocked down, get right back up and never listen to anyone who says you can't or shouldn't go on.